Welcome back. More than 70 people have been reportedly killed after a ferry sank in the Tigris River in Iraq's Mosul city, carrying more than 100 people on board. Rescue teams have been looking for survivors as the Prime Minister ordered an investigation. Let's go over to Joyce Ohaja in our London studio for more on the foreign scene.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom in London. Aid workers are desperately trying to reach stranded survivors as heavy rain batters areas devastated by Cyclone Idai. Officials say thousands of people still need to be rescued in Mozambique a week after the storm hit. Dani Vucinovic reports.
From the air, floodwaters stretch out as far as the eye can see. In some areas, it's thought to be 6 meters deep. It's a race against time for the rescuers who are trying to reach those stuck on rooftops and clinging to trees. Others were found stranded in the water, desperate for dry land. In Mozambique's capital, hundreds sought refuge at a stadium. A military helicopter ferried them to safety. Aid agencies are now warning without clean water or food, the chances of survival for many are fading fast. In Zimbabwe, Chimanimani has been identified as one of the worst affected areas. The World Food Programme says 90% of the district has been significantly damaged and 200,000 people are likely to need urgent aid for the next 3 months. Medics are also trying to help those suffering both physically and emotionally.
We may treat the wounds now, but there are a lot of mental health issues that will arise from this. I've heard some of the stories from the local people. Some of them, they have lost the whole family. Some have lost children.
More than 300 deaths have been confirmed. The numbers are expected to rise significantly. Dani Vucinovic, Channel's Television News.
New Zealand is banning military-style semi-automatic and assault rifles. The decision comes 6 days after 50 people were killed by a gunman at 2 mosques in Christchurch. Police say all the victims have now been identified. As the tough new laws come into force, a buyback scheme is being introduced to compensate gun owners.
I absolutely believe there will be a common view amongst New Zealanders, those who use guns for legitimate purposes, and those who have never touched one, that the time for the mass and easy availability of these weapons must end.
The consequences and what we've seen is terrible, and something must change. And I think this is a good decision.
You cannot control people, so you got to control the law, and now the laws governing the gun ones. So yeah, it's a right step for the society.
At least 6 people have been killed and more than 20 others injured during an attack in the Afghan capital, Kabul. 3 blasts were heard during a ceremony to celebrate the Persian New Year. Authorities say rockets were fired at the gathering and civilian homes. A man has been arrested. An explosion at a chemical plant in eastern China has claimed at least 6 lives. Witnesses say workers were trapped in buildings close to the factory. Children at a nearby kindergarten are among those who were injured. The cause of the blast is not yet clear. Devastating floods in Nebraska are threatening to push further south. Large swathes of the U.S. state were hit by a late winter storm last week. 4 people were killed and more than $1 billion in damage has been caused. A state of emergency has been declared in Missouri, Nebraska and Iowa. In Australia, residents in the Northern Territory are preparing for Cyclone Trevor, which is expected to make landfall on Saturday. Weather experts believe it could develop into a severe Category 4 storm.
Very dangerous winds, wind gusts in excess of 250 kilometres an hour would be expected in that scenario. Very dangerous storm surge and heavy rainfall also expected as it makes landfall.
What is being undertaken right now is the largest evacuation prior to a cyclone we have seen in the Territory's history. The severity of the storm, the significant threat it poses, as well as the complications that come with the remoteness of the area led to the decision to commence evacuations in the area yesterday.
The US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has described Hezbollah as a risk to the Middle East. His comments from the new US Embassy to Israel come ahead of a visit to Beirut.
You talked about Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all of these entities that present risk to Middle East stability and to Israel. They're determined to wipe this country off the face of the planet, and we have a moral obligation and a political one to prevent that from happening. You should know the United States is prepared to do that.
And finally, Europe has its first underwater restaurant. Situated on the southern tip of Norway, the building, which seats 40 people, has been designed to cope with harsh weather. With a window to the ocean, it officially opened this week and already has more than 7,000 bookings.
The fact that it is under the sea, I think that's the main reason why we have so many covers now. But over time, I think that the food will, I hope that people will come just because of the food as well.
And that's your international news around the world in 5.
Thanks a lot, Joyce. Under the sea. Let's go on to some sports. And here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Yes, indeed. Nigeria is one win away from qualifying for the ICC Cricket Under-19 World Cup after beating Tanzania by 151 runs at the African elimination in Namibia. Well, Nigeria recorded their highest batting total in the tournament thus far, with 211 runs for the loss of 3 wickets in 50 overs. Our confidence is high in the camp of the Super Eagles as Seychelles tackle the 3-time African champions at the Stephen Keshi Stadium in Asaba Delta State tomorrow. The group leaders, Nigeria, have already sealed their place at this year's African Cup of Nations in Egypt, but they are looking to rack up a high-score win for bragging rights. Well, the Super Eagles head coach Gernot Rohr says he will unleash his best legs as a high-score win will put the Eagles in a good mood for Tuesday's international friendly against Egypt at the same venue.
The answer is what we can do to help the under-23, but to make sure that we win this game on Friday and we can have also a good team on Tuesday.
We have been together for quite some times now, the World Cup, coming back with all the AFCON games, and we have not lost any game. So for me, I have that confidence that we have a very good team because we know each other for so long. So we are just waiting for the tournament to start. But right now we have that experience that we have been to the World Cup. We have that experience with all some of the new players. So going to the Nation Cup with these new players that they have seen the experience of the World Cup, I know that we can do better.
Cristiano Ronaldo has been fined €20,000 by UEFA for his celebration during Juventus' last 16 Champions League victory over Atletico Madrid in Turin. Now, the 34-year-old fired his side into the quarterfinals with a hat-trick in the second leg, overturning Atletico's 2-0 victory from the first leg. A former Netherlands and Saudi Arabia and, of course, Australia coach Bert van Marwijk has been appointed to succeed Alberto Zaccaroni in charge of the United Arab Emirates. The UAE FA announced the appointment of the 66-year-old 7 weeks after the Italian Zaccaroni departed when the hosts were knocked out of the Asian Cup by Qatar in the semi-finals. Van Marwijk took the Dutch to the World Cup final in 2010 and also led Saudi Arabia to qualification for last year's finals in Russia. French Open prize money will increase by 8% at this year's tournament to $48.6 million. Now, the French Tennis Federation says the men and women's champions will receive $2.62 million. That's an increase of 4.55% from last year. While the runners-up will receive $1.34 million, a 5.36% increase. Well, that's a wrap on sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. The news at 10 continues shortly.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. And the main news again. INEC today said it will resume the collation and announcement of the Rivers State Governorship and House of Assembly elections on April the 2nd. Also today, the Federal High Court in Abuja will deliver judgment on the Bauchi supplementary polls on March the 25th, just as the High Court in Adamawa has postponed the supplementary governorship election in the state. The President today promised all-inclusive and transparent policies as he gets set to begin another 4-year term as he vows to entrench corruption-free governance system. And more than 70 people have been killed after a ferry capsized in Iraq. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Hunyato. You have a great night.